Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. This frigid weather is putting an even greater demand on suppliers of propane gas this winter.
So much so that several of you have contacted us concerned about the supply running out. We sent Patrick Nelson to find out why supplies are lower than usual and how it might affect you. Here's tonight's top story.
Propane always does get tight almost every cold year to a certain extent, but this year's is just, with the extra cold temperatures, it's worse than it's been in the past.
Propane industry officials say this year the demand for propane in the Midwest increased significantly. They say larger volumes of propane were needed to dry crops after a late cold harvest, and with wind chills dipping below negative 40 degrees across the state, people want their propane tanks filled to the top to stay warm. Distributors say the shortage of propane is not on the verge of crisis, but supply truck drivers now must travel farther to get enough propane to continue to meet the increase in demand.
Dealers are able to deliver some supply, and like I said, working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, they're doing their best to keep their customers supplied.
We ask our drivers to, if you got a shop that somebody's really not using, they got a 1,000-gallon tank, don't go and put 800 gallons in that tank. Make sure that our homes, our farms that are critical and can't freeze, that they have the propane.
With warmer weather on the way, propane distributors hope that it will ease the demand for propane here in Northeast Wisconsin. But industry leaders say that there needs to be more of a conversation on how to handle shortages in the future.
As long as the weather straightens itself out like it's supposed to this week and get into the 30s, I think some of this anxiety from the customer of I need to get ahead and buy some will slow down and it'll help the whole system catch up a little bit.
Patrick Nelson, Action 2 News.
The propane shortage we've been reporting on is getting worse right here in Northeast Wisconsin. Many of you have told us you're having trouble getting propane to keep your family warm and in some cases stay in business. Industry experts say supplies are down about 40%. Prices, though, are up 50%. The reasons? Well, this brutal cold, a late wet corn harvest that used a lot of propane to dry it, and increased exports. Jeff Alexander shows us how the shortage is affecting communities in Northeast Wisconsin.
I am completely out at this plant right now. I am totally out.
It's not the answer Tim Steiner is hoping for in his search for propane at Customers Gas Service in Amberg.
They're out of gas. Hey, right now the situation is our tanks are empty. We were told that we were going to be getting some propane in, so we delivered every drop that we had based on the fact that we were getting more. And then our next load was pushed back.
Price says the situation is far beyond an inconvenience for his customers. They're getting scared.
I don't even sleep at night. I mean, my phone is ringing 24 hours a day. People are running out of gas left and right. What we're trying to do is we're trying to find them gas companies that will at least, put something in their tank.
At the downtown cafe, the sign on the front door says it all. The doors close at 1 today for the second day in a row. The cafe is just about out of propane and saving what's left for the weekend.
Oh, we are losing business. Yesterday I turned away at least 7 people who came in after I'd already closed. Our waitresses, our cooks, they're losing shifts. It's crazy.
Bieber says the cafe found a supplier in Green Bay willing to deliver, but not until next week, and it won't be cheap.
Over $4 a gallon.
But you have no choice.
We have no choice. This is our livelihood.
I heard other businesses are closing too, and it just hurts the economy, and the economy is not doing well anyways up here.
Price says he normally receives 10,000 gallon loads of propane every week. Now he's just hoping to get 1 before the end of the month. He's not the only one.
Every morning. This is the topic of our town right now.
Jeff Alexander, Action 2 News, Amberg.
With a growing number of people in Wisconsin having dangerously low levels of propane left to heat their homes and businesses, the state is taking action. Governor Walker says on Monday he will meet with representatives from the propane industry, local and state leaders, and others affected by the propane shortage, impacting an estimated 250,000 people in Wisconsin. Today, the governor said there is no quick fix, though, to the propane shortage. shortage hitting most Midwestern states and sending prices for propane to record highs. In the meantime, state and federal officials have eased restrictions on the number of hours propane transport drivers can be on the road and on the amount of propane their trucks can carry.
We've been in very close contact not only with the industry leaders, we have been working with the Propane Association, making all of those suppliers in Wisconsin that we support them as much as we can so we can get the fuel we need here in Wisconsin.
And we also learned this afternoon emergency management directors throughout northeast Wisconsin are working together on a plan that will include opening warming shelters in areas affected by the propane shortage. We'll have much more on that tonight at 5.
Families who rely on propane for everything from heating their homes to cooking desperately hope the shortage will end soon. Bao Vang spent the day in the Northwoods to learn how some have had to adjust.
The Baldwin children in Silver Cliff aren't usually so bundled up inside.
Normally they're barefoot, so yeah, they've got socks on. We've got a hat on the baby.
Mama 5, Michelle Baldwin, had to turn down the thermostat so the furnace doesn't kick in and borrow a space heater from her parents. Right now, they're one of many families running out of propane, blamed on an industry shortage.
If you're wondering just how serious a propane shortage is in our area, here's an example. This family is down to just 7% of its 500-gallon tank.
In the midst of their busy lives, they hadn't noticed their supplier hadn't come for a while.
When I heard 7%, I about choked. Like, really? 7%, huh? And I thought about it, there's only so much we can shut off.
The Baldwin children also know, don't use the hot water.
We're just using cold water and microwaving it. We had a shower at my parents'.
Down the road, 79-year-old Alberta Pluckerman's propane tank is down to 8%. Unlike the Baldwins, she has a wood-burning fireplace to help heat her home, but keeping it going has been a chore.
I have to get up 3-4 times in the night, and I got my walker, but I'm so scared of falling again.
Pluckerman refuses to pay the increased prices some other suppliers are now charging and will wait for her company to fill her up. The Baldwins cannot wait. They have found one supplier, but they must order a minimum of 150 gallons at $2.99 each, more than twice their contracted price. The family will just have to sit tight for another 8 to 10 days. In Marinette County, Bao Vang, Action 2 News.
In the meantime, state officials and federal leaders representing Wisconsin are working to get more propane into the state. Jeff Alexander takes a closer look in tonight's top story.
With a growing number of people in Wisconsin having dangerously low levels of propane left to heat their homes and businesses, the state is taking action. Governor Walker says on Monday he will meet with representatives from the propane industry, local and state leaders, and others affected by the propane shortage, impacting an estimated 250,000 people in Wisconsin. In his radio address today, the governor said he's doing all he can.
With forecasts calling for continued cold weather, propane supplies will remain a challenge. We'll continue to work with our resources, our lawmakers, and the propane industry to help Wisconsin recover from this shortage in the months ahead.
The governor warns, though, there is no quick fix to the shortage hitting most Midwestern states, sending prices for propane to record highs. In the meantime, state and federal officials have eased restrictions on the number of hours propane transport drivers can be on the road and the amount of propane their trucks can carry. Wisconsin Congressman Reed Ribble, who represents many of the affected communities, released a statement today saying, quote, he will remain in contact with industry representatives, businesses, individuals, and government entities regarding the propane supply, and promising he will, quote, stay on this issue in the coming days and weeks. Those trying to resolve the issue say the biggest challenge is that it isn't just Wisconsin, but 26 states running low on propane. Jeff Alexander, Action 2 News.
Customers who are lucky enough to fill their tanks with propane are also receiving a dose of sticker shock. The U.S. Energy Information Administration says prices have been steadily rising for months due to a supply shortage caused by a colder than normal winter, a late wet corn harvest, and increased exports. Turning now to our smart screen, a gallon of propane in Wisconsin sold for $1.67 at the beginning of October. The price increased to $1.85 by December 1st and continued to climb to $2.50 15 cents at the start of this month. The price actually increased to $2.29 just 4 days ago. But those prices may sound like a bargain, as Northeast Wisconsin suppliers are now telling us customers may now have to pay more than $5 per gallon. And here is why. The upper Midwest is supplied with propane by pipelines from Canada and from Conway, Kansas. The northern route was actually shut down until late last month due to maintenance. That means most suppliers are turning to the storage hub in Kansas, where a gallon of propane costs $4.93 at one point yesterday. Emily Matesic has more from Madison in tonight's top story.
About 250,000 Wisconsinites use propane to heat their homes. And with LP in short supply, state government officials say they're doing all they can to help. Governor Scott Walker met with dozens of state leaders, including those in the propane industry, as well as emergency management officials and others, to continue working to help Wisconsinites in need. Today's meeting was to get key stakeholders face to face to discuss the needs and possible solutions to the propane problem, something the governor says the state has been working on since late last year.
In the fall, I took action to do an executive order that allowed for more hours for those transporting propane. Beginning of this year, we did a similar executive order to allow for weight limits to be adjusted.
Those orders remain in effect as Wisconsin tries to bring in as much additional propane as needed. To help, the governor announced $8 million in financial backing that is being made available to those who deliver propane to the end customer.
This is not, in no way, this is a financial bill or anything else. This is literally saying, if we've got propane ready here, we need to get that end user, and if one of the barriers to that is, particularly for a lot of our small companies, having access to the line of credit they need to pay for that, to then get that to the consumer who ultimately pay to help them cover those costs. We're going to do that.
In addition to helping fund the propane deliveries, Governor Walker says more than $8 million is also being made available to customers who may need help buying LP. In Madison, Emily Matesic, Action 2 News.
Action 2 News filed a Freedom of Information request with the state of Wisconsin to find out just how many people continue to have problems. We received all of the complaints, more than 230 of them, from propane customers who filed with the state specifically about customers' gas service of Amberg. In the complaints, people asked to have their propane contracts filled or their money back. Tonight, people filing those complaints say after months of waiting, they want to know what's going on with the state's investigation. Patrick Nelson live in the studio tonight with that top story. Patrick.
Bill and Cammie, take a look at the top story on the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture Trade and Consumer Protection website. Buying tips for propane. The state is telling people to look at heating options now and to buy early, but hundreds of people are still waiting to find out if they will have last year's propane contracts filled by customers' gas service of Amberg, or if they'll get their money back. Tonight, they say they need to hear how the state will protect them if they decide to sign another propane contract.
Well, no one understands what's really happening.
Tom Zenz owns a home in Amberg and is one of 233 people who filed complaints with the state about customers' gas service of Amberg. He says they failed to deliver on his propane contract last winter.
I guess what I'm worried about is, and I think some of my neighbors are, what stops us from the next guy doing the same thing? We didn't get anything for our money. Last year I paid in June, actually June 20th. My check was cashed within a week, and I never got anything.
We tried contacting the owner of Customers Gas Service of Amberg over the phone and made a visit to his home and office, but couldn't get a response to the complaints. The state also denied my request to find out how Customers Gas responded to the complaints filed in Madison in a letter, writing in part, quote, "The release of the requested records at this time may jeopardize the successful outcome of any ensuing investigation or enforcement violations of consumer protection laws." End quote. With the investigation pending, Zen says he and many of his neighbors aren't sure what to do next.
It's difficult. You just don't want to write another check and next year have the same thing.
After 4 months, Zen says he and many of the others who filed complaints with the state are worried their case is being overlooked.
They gave us all a number and a case number, and we don't hear anything. And I've called, I try and call every 3 weeks, and I get the same thing. It's active, somebody's looking at it, but looking at it and doing something about it is two different things.
Now, in the front window of Customers Gas Service of Amberg, you'll find this sign. Now, we still don't know what the future holds for this business, but we'll continue to dig for answers and we'll update you as soon as we have more information. Live in the studio, Patrick Nelson, Action 2 News.